Hey, and welcome to I Can't Play Guitar. My name is Jamie, and I can't play guitar. And welcome back if you're joining us again. We're going through learning the guitar from the beginning. We've been working through the Orange Amplification Rock Foundations Beginners course, and it's been quite the ride so far. Not really, just pretty boring mostly. So we've been learning some chords, we've been going over those, some chord progressions. We just started going over the different scales that they have available. I've been looking to not master, but be confident and clean with each section before we move on to the next section. So we will be going over and doing a ton of practice. Luckily, I did get some training when I took percussion throughout my school career, from grade school all the way to high school. So I know that one of the, in my opinion, most important and one of the most important things that was stressed by all of my music teachers was to be able to make sure you practice something slow, even the parts you can play, to work out the hard parts. So I've been having trouble with certain chord progressions, and one of the things that had always plagued me, even when drumming, it's very hard, and I think this is hard for all players, to sit down, use either your inner beat, stomp your foot, or a metronome, which is probably preferable, and slow those parts down, the entire part that you have to slow down until you get it, and gradually build speed until you can play it at that speed. And that's like tedious, boring stuff that you really don't hear about, that I think is important to talk about once in a while, that's how you learn how to play music. And it's whatever you want to call it, brutal. It's brutal seems a little dramatic, but it's not easy, but it's simple. You just slow it down, break it down, and whatever the most difficult part of that, let's say we have a riff and we have a chord change, like for me, this D minor to a G is a very big one, and then back, and it's been difficult. So I know that specific part of that riff, and that is just one or two measures. I have to make sure I slow down those one or two measures until I can play it properly with the right fingering cleanly, and then I have to slow the rest of the piece down to that tempo, play the entire piece at that tempo, and then pick it up to where I can play it. So it can get tedious, but it's worth it, because in the end, that's how you learn it. If you can't play it at full speed, I don't know another way to learn how to play something. All right, so let's move over, and we're gonna go to back over this rock foundation course, and we're gonna work immediately on our chords, open chords, and I'll just quickly run through some of these here. And if you do stop by, feel free to say hi. If not, that's cool too. All right, got the G chord. Let's open it up here. D chord. C chord. This one's hard. I don't have large hands, so they're pretty small. And we're actually working on up here this thumb dampening the E, because if you do hit the E, it's that like real growly sound. Doesn't sound nice. C sounds much better without that. You dampen the E, make sure you can do it with your pick. Most of the players advise dampening. Most players I know. We got A minor. A major. See a lot of these, the D is dampened. Basically, if you're not playing the E, if you're not playing the E, you probably want to dampen it. E minor. E major. D minor. Alright, let's try these chord progressions. First one is C, D, A minor.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Sorry, that was G, D, C, A
1,
minor.
2,
E minor, A minor,
3,
D, G.
4.
Next one, E minor, D, C, G.
1, 2, 3, 4.
E minor, D,
1,
C, G.
2, 3, 4.
That was E, A, D minor, C, G. Little strumming.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, one more time. G, D,
1,
C, A minor.
2, 3, 4.
E minor, A minor, D, G.
1, 2, 3,
Let's hit it.
4.
E minor, D, C, G.
1, 2, 3, 4. One,
E, A, D,
2,
G.
3, 4.
D minor, C, G.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Done.
1, 2.
Okay. 1 second. So we get the open chords. Let's go back to viola lessons. Octave scales. There we go.
Let's take a look at some one-octave scales.
Okay.
The first scale is C major. The first note starts on the 3rd fret of the A string.
A string.
The second note is the open D string.
You've got it super fucking distorted.
Followed by the 2nd fret on the D string with our middle finger. The 3rd fret of the D string with our 3rd finger. The open G string. The 2nd fret of the G string with our middle finger. The open B string. And finally, our 1st finger on the 1st fret of the B string. So altogether, your C major scale should look like this. Let's try it with the metronome set to 100 beats per minute.
Wow, I'm terrible. I got really distracted by that one little riff I was playing. Fucking horrible. Hold on. Let's get a metronome going. Boom. Alright, so that's 85. So there we go. We got the C major. One more time for you. A minor. Let's check it out.
Our next scale is the A minor scale. It starts with the open A string. Followed by the second fret on the A string with our middle finger. The third fret of the A string with our third finger. The open D string. The second fret on the D string with our middle finger. The third fret on the D string with our third finger. The open G string.
Yeah, so I know that one. Okay, G major. One, two, three, four.
Our next scale is the G major scale. Start
Okay.
with your third finger on the bottom E string, third fret. Then the open A string. The second fret of the A string with your middle finger. The third fret of the A string with your third finger. The open D string. The second fret of the D string with your first finger.
First finger.
The fourth fret of the D string with your third finger. And the open G string. So this is how your G major scale should sound. Again, let's try with the metronome, set to 100 beats per minute, one note per click.
scale at all. Ready? Let's put the metronome on. Alright, I gotta take a quick break, and I'll be right back. Stay with us or don't. We'll see you next time. Gonna take a very quick break. Be back in about 10 minutes. Just restroom break. You gotta go, man. Hey, we're back. We put a pot of coffee on, so I'm gonna have to hit that up in a sec, but we are back, baby. Alright. We wanted to quickly go over another thing that we're using in our process for learning the guitar, and that is some books. Hey, remember books? We have this book that I've actually owned for a long time. Got it at picked it up at a garage sale or a thrift store a long time ago, which I recommend you do as well or get it used. You can get it brand new because, it's a great book. But this is the Guitar Handbook. It's one of the, I would say, probably top 20 books that's been published on the guitar in the last 50 years. There's some pretty landmark books. There's some books that came out in the 70s about doing repairs on your guitar and stuff like that. And there's a few other books on chords. But this is definitely one of the best books I've read in terms of giving you a good scope of the instrument. It goes over types of guitars, different famous guitar players, tempo, timing, rhythm guitarist, lead guitarist, all kinds of stuff. All sorts of stuff in here. So this is just a shining endorsement for this book. We haven't been reading it a ton. We've been mostly focusing on our Orange Amps course because we're actually studying a few other things right now. reading a few other books right now, but this is a great one to have around. Maybe a bathroom reader or a coffee table reader, or throw it in your bag, bring it to work, read with you when you get some breaks, or what have you. Bring it to the park when you're out getting some exercise. They just have a lot of great information in here, and a lot of stuff that I think, if you are newer to the guitar, gives you. It can be easy to get overwhelmed online and stuck in the cycle of going to YouTube and Google and getting pigeonholed into the same, what might feel like variety, but the same basically 5 or 6 narratives. And looking in books, especially well established ones that guitarists have been using for years, can show you, like right now, if you're not that familiar with actual guitars, we can see a Rickenbacker 1996, which is based on like one of the Beatles guitars. They have Jackson Randy Rhoads guitars in there, all sorts of cool guitars. Playing the guitar, they talk about this is describing how noise gate works. So it is just super comprehensive. Here they're talking about guitar maintenance and customizing, testing leads, shit like that. So it covers a really wide breadth. Setting up your guitar, a lot of the stuff we don't know, but we have it here. It is a great reference. I don't think it's something that you read through. You could, but I don't think it's something you just sit down and read through. Japanese guitars, Ibanez, cool. That's a fucking cool guitar. So, basses. Yeah, as you can tell, we like this. We like this book. Fender guitars, standard Strat. We got the Tele Deluxe. That's what I've got. Well, I've got the Tele Custom. Tele Deluxe, Strat style bridge and headstock, 2 humbuckers. Tele Custom introduced in 72, 73, 1 single coil and 1 humbucking. That's my guitar. So you can even, like, if you have a guitar, go in, find it. Might even be able to tell you about your guitar in here. And I know you can Google it, but oftentimes, again, when you Google it, it's so easy to get pigeonholed. It's so easy to fall into the same trap of just looking over the same information, and someone has spent way more time than most people spend online to produce something like a book like this. The Rickenbacker frying pan, a 22 electric Hawaiian guitar. That's fucking dope. So, these are just kind of things I recommend you do. I enjoy. We wanted to share with you. So, this is The Guitar Handbook by Ralph Denyer. A unique source book for the guitar player, amateur or professional, acoustic or electric, rock, blues, jazz, or folk. So it's everything. If you like the electric guitar or the acoustic, if you like guitar, you should get this book. And if you don't read books, you should get it, and remember that books are for everybody. So, if you can't read, then you probably should go on YouTube and learn how to read. And once you're done on YouTube, you can get this guitar book. All right, we're going to go back to playing guitar. Get the book. We'll definitely have it in the comments, and we'll throw it. If you see in our description, you can go to our just follow the link to the gear we use. We'll just put it in the gear we use, along with the other books and literature we might recommend. And any of the gear you see here that we're using, how we sound like this, just check out the description down below. My guitar, this is a Squier Telecaster. Like I said, I identified it actually through that book. It's not the original Fender from 70s, but it's a replication of that custom. Alright, go back to the scales here. We're gonna do a run through C minor scale again.
Let's take a look at some one-octave scales. The first scale is C major. The first note starts on the 3rd fret of the A string. The second note is the open D string. Followed by the 2nd fret on the D string with our middle finger.
Alright, I think I remember it. It's only been a minute. Let's start at 90. Well, no, it's only 100. Start at 100, throw that metronome on.
Our next scale is the A minor scale. It starts with the open A string. Followed by the second fret on the A string with our middle finger. The third fret of the A string with our third finger. The open D string.
There's A minor. There's G major.
Our next scale is the G major scale. Start with your third finger on the bottom E string, third fret. Then the open A string. The second fret of the A string with your middle finger. The third fret of the A string with your third finger. The open D string. The second fret of the D string with your first finger. The fourth fret of the D string with your third finger. And the open G string. So this is how your G major scale should sound. Again, strike the metronome, set to 100 beats per minute, one note per click.
Next one, E minor. I think I know it already, but...
The next scale is the E minor scale. We start with the bottom E string played open. The second fret of the bottom E string with our middle finger. The third fret of the bottom E string with our third finger. The open A string. The second fret of the A string with our second finger. The third fret of the A string with our third finger.
That was brutal.
The
Alright, I've got it. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's metal. Not really. Alright, that's an easy one though. E minor. We got a few more left, and then we're gonna go shoot over to Justin Guitar's website and check him out for a bit.
We're now going to take a look at the A minor pentatonic scale. We start by placing
Sure.
our first finger on the bottom E string, 5th fret. Then we stretch up with our little finger and play the 8th fret on the bottom E string. Then the 5th fret of the A string with our first finger. The 7th fret of the A string with our third finger. And then the same again on the D string. So we have the 5th fret with our first finger. And the 7th fret with our third finger. So altogether, your A minor pentatonic scale should sound like this. Let's try it with the metronome, set to 100 beats per minute. Next we have the C major pentatonic scale. We start by placing our middle finger on the bottom E string, 8th fret. Then the 10th fret with our little finger. Then the 7th fret of the A string with our first finger. The 10th fret with our little finger. Pentatonic scale. We start by placing our middle finger on the bottom E string, 8th fret.
3, 5, 7, 8.
Then the 10th fret with our little finger. Then the 7th fret of the A string with our first finger. The 10th fret with our little finger. Same again on the D string, so we have the 7th fret with our first finger. And the 10th fret with our little finger. So your C major pentatonic scale should sound like this. Again, let's try it with the metronome.
Metronome time. Brutal. I don't even remember the last one, honestly.
We're now going to take a look at the A minor pentatonic scale. We start by placing our first finger on the bottom E string, 5th fret. Then we stretch up with our little finger and play the 8th fret on the bottom E string. Then the 5th fret of the A string with our first finger. our third finger. And then the same again on the D string. So we have the 5th fret with our first finger. And the 7th fret with our third finger. So altogether, your A minor pentatonic scale should sound like this. Let's try it with the metronome, set to 100 beats per minute. Next we have the C major pentatonic scale. We start by placing our middle finger on the bottom E string, 8th fret. Then the 10th fret with our little finger. Then the 7th fret of the A string with our first finger. With our little finger. Same again on the D string, so we have the 7th fret with our first finger. And the 10th fret with our little finger. So your C major pentatonic scale should sound like this. Again, let's try it with the metronome.
Alright, let's try the last one. G chromatic scale.
The last scale is the G chromatic scale. We start with our first finger on the bottom E string, 3rd fret. Then the 4th fret with our middle finger. The 5th fret with our 3rd finger. 6th fret with our little finger,
I hate this scale.
and the 7th fret with our little finger. We then continue the same pattern on the A string. So the 3rd fret of the A string with our first finger, the 4th fret, the 5th fret, the 6th fret,
Hate it.
and the 7th fret. Then on the D string, we have the 3rd fret with our first finger, the 4th fret with our second finger,
Jesus, longest scale ever.
and finally the 5th fret with our 3rd finger. So altogether, your G chromatic scale should sound like this.
God, what a fucking ugly scale.
Let's try it with the metronome, set to 100 beats per minute,
It's like-
1 note per click.
It's so bad. I don't even... It's stupid.
Now don't worry if you can't play them at the speeds I've shown you, you have to work your way up. So start slow and gently speed up the metronome until you
don't.
get to 100 beats per minute.
I wasn't worried. But thank you. Alright, I need some more coffee. I'll be right back.
Exercise in this
Okay, we're
entire
back.
course. It is the 1 minute changes. We're going to pick 2 chords and change between them as many times as we can in 1 minute. Sounds pretty simple. Actually, it is a relatively simple exercise, but the benefits are huge. As I already mentioned, the first hurdle that beginners have is dealing with the finger pain. That's generally pretty horrible for a couple of weeks and gradually gets better. Should be pretty much gone after a couple of months. if not sooner.
horrible.
The next challenge is making the chord changes fast enough to be able to play a song.
Sorry,
You can't
dude.
really play a song just with one chord. There might be a song here or there that's just one chord, but most songs have multiple chords, so learning to change between the chords is the thing that you need to be able to do to play any songs. It's also the fact that we count the changes in the 1 minute changes exercise is a fantastic motivational tool because you actually get to see your progress. There's no question about it. Sometimes when you're learning guitar, it's like, oh, have I really got better? I've done all of this practice. But with 1 minute changes, because you're writing the number of changes down each practice session, you can see yourself go from like, I did 5 changes this minute, and then the next day I did 10, and then the next day I did 25, and it's quantifiable. It's a really fantastic motivational tool, so I definitely encourage you to be using the practice routine generator on my site or the 1 minute changes counter in the app, or at the very least a piece of paper and a pen and writing down how many chord changes you do with each practice session. So I've already given you the idea. Right now we've only got 2 chords to change between, which is the A chord and the D chord. So the first thing I recommend you do is just actually make the chord changes a few times. So we're doing A to D today. It's the only 2 chords that we know. So just remembering to use the anchor finger there, just trying to get the chord nice and fresh before we go into doing the 1 minute changes. The object of the exercise of 1 minute changes is to do fast chord changes. They're allowed to be a little bit sloppy. I know this might seem a little bit weird, but the accuracy of the finger placement isn't the key thing. They should be on the right string and in the right fret. But the rest of it is kind of forgivable. If the notes aren't quite ringing out as clearly as you'd like or whatever, that's okay. That's why we do the chord perfect practice as well. So chord perfect practice is about making the chords sound really good. 1 minute changes is about making the changes really fast. And if you practice those 2 things separately, after a few weeks you'll find they start to come together and you'll find that you're doing very fast and accurate chord changes. But in the initial stages, those two things might seem a little bit distant. So you're doing your 1 minute changes and you're like, oh, these chords aren't ringing out.
So just to go over, if you're watching along with us, we are going over and using Orange Amp's course. But I think that it's good to the Justin guitar course looks fantastic, but I think it's one of those courses where it can help you catch some of the things that I mean, if, in my opinion, and it sounds like it's pretty much is it can help you catch some of the stuff that there's not a ton of exercises for in traditional guitar workbooks, or that it can help fill in some spots where maybe even a paid one is going to leave off. These are small things that I feel like are things that guitarists that I respect and envy do. So yeah. Shit.
The rest of it is kind of forgivable if the notes aren't quite ringing out as clearly as you'd like or whatever. We're doing very fast and accurate chord changes. But in the initial stages, those two things might seem a little bit distant. So you're doing your 1 minute changes and you're like, oh, these chords aren't ringing out right, you know, it's not good enough. It's okay. If you've got any doubt, go and watch my left-handed practice, the Nitsuds lessons, where I'm starting out doing these chord changes. It's a bit of a fumble fest. You know, there's lots of duff notes coming out, and that's totally all right. So once you've got your fingers, they kind of know roughly where they're going to go. You're going to hit start on the timer, and then you're going to go do as many as you can. You're going to strum each chord, and you're going to count each time you do a chord change. I usually count the first one as well, so I'd hit start and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Going through and counting out loud so that you can count your changes. Now, ideally, what we're looking for is a flow. So even if it's real slow, trying to get like a flow going from one chord to the next. Just so you've got like a pulse to it. Because once you've got a pulse, you can start trying to speed it up. Ideally, like the long-term thing I think is that you want to get to 60 changes in a minute. That's a chord change every second. For sure you won't be doing that in your first week. Okay, but that's, if you can do 60 chord changes of a particular pair of chords, I'd say you don't need to practice it anymore. Okay, so that's the object. To pass the first grade, I would usually say, and to get through this lesson, I'd say that you want to get up around 30 changes in a minute. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. up to 30. If you can get 30 changes done in a minute, that's enough to move on to the next lesson. To pass the grade out is 30, but really 60 is that's the target that you want to try and reach with all of the chord changes. You're going to find some chord changes harder than others. Of course, this week we've only got one. But as we move on further down the course and we introduce more chords, there are more different changes. So you want to work on the ones that you're finding the hardest. Do let me know in the comments below how you're getting on with this. How many chord changes did you get through the very first time that you had a go at doing your 1 minute changes, and how fast did you progress? It's a really fun thing. Definitely if you do it and you're feeling like, oh, I can't do it, I'm hopeless, go and watch me try it left-handed the first time. You'll see me struggle with it as well. Dead normal, just stick at it. Okay, that's the thing. A little practice often is the way forward in these beginner stages.
Alright, let's do that shit then. Set a timer. So yeah, as you can see, Google just has a timer. It's easy. Ready? I'm gonna do D minor, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Shit. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Oh. Let's try it one more time. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Oh. Let's do it one more time. This is kind of a toughie. We'll go on to a different one. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Oh shit, it didn't start. Okay. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 30, 32. So yeah, it fucking works, you know. Um, let's see another change. D to G is a pretty classic one, so let's try that one out. We're gonna go from yeah, D to G. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Let's do it one more time. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28, 29, and 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, then 40, and 41, and 42, and 43, and 44, and 45, 46, and 47, and 48. Oh, that was good. All right, let's do, what else do we have? We have, we'll do D minor to A minor, because that's another one that we have. D to A minor. Work that one through. It does start with A minor. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Try it again. D minor to A minor. 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Okay. I think the fingering, I'm making it too difficult for this one, so. One, two, three. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Oh, I might have fucked up my whole thing there. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Whew. Interesting. It's a lot. Hey, if you're hanging out with us, thanks. If you're not, okay. let's see here. Let's just go back to just in guitar for a second. Next lesson.
Hey, how you doing? Justin here. Today I'm going to talk about your very first strumming pattern, which is simply strumming on the one. Now, all of the music that we're looking at the early stages of the beginner's course is in 4/4 time. That means it's got 4 beats in the bar. I'm sure you've heard before, or seen at a gig, people go 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the music starts. Maybe you wondered why they count to 4. It's usually because there's 4 beats in the bar. There are other time signatures where there's different amounts of beats in the bar, but 4/4 time, or 4 beats in the bar, is the most common. Now, the general idea here is that you want to learn to count along. Eventually we're going to be tapping our foot along as well, but you want to be, first of all, thinking just about this counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get used to being able to count it. I know it seems silly, but have a go at doing that first. It might feel a little bit odd if you're used to counting to 10. And then what you want to be doing is practicing strumming only on the one. So get, say, your D chord up, and you're going to strum down on 1 and count the rest. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see that my arm is moving for all of the rest of the beats? That's the ideal. 2, 3, 4. Even though I'm actually not strumming, I'm still keeping my arm moving. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think many beginners are going to be able to strum on one and keep the hand moving for the rest of the time. I couldn't do that really when I was learning my left-handed stuff. Too difficult. But you'll find through the course I'm trying to give you the ideal option as well, because some people will be ready for it. So you might do it and be like, I'm cool with this, I can move my hand down as I'm counting along. I'm totally cool with it, in which case I want you to do it. For me, it was a little bit more cumbersome than that. I didn't feel like I could do that, and I was more worried about the chord changes, which is the next thing coming up. Just even getting used to just strumming down, going 1, 2, 3, 4, chord change, 1, 2, 3, 4, chord change, 1, 2. That would be amazing if you can get to that point. For most beginners, it's going to be more like 1, 2, 3, 4. Get the fingers in. 2.
All right,
3,
dude, stop calling me out.
4. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's okay not to be okay at this stuff, especially in your first week or first couple of weeks. It's going to be a real struggle.
All
and
right.
That's totally cool. Be cool with that.
Thank you.
Okay? Really, really important at this stage that you get used to that idea. The reason that I want to talk about this strumming on one is particularly when you go to play a song, even if it's real slow. At the early stages, we just want to be trying to get that strum on beat 1. Not strumming on beat 2 or beat 4, but trying to count and get used to the idea of strumming on beat 1. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, chord change, 1, 2, 3, 4, chord change, 1. So we're trying to get the chord change in time to be able to strum the 1 again, even if it means starting the change immediately after playing. So going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay? The strum on the 1 is the key thing. So if you have to leave the chord early, if the chord change is quite slow and you have to leave early to get there, that's okay. The thing you're aiming for is getting that strum on beat 1, particularly when you're playing a song or you're playing along with a backing track kind of thing, using the app, the Beginner Song Course app. You want to be aiming to try and get your strum on 1. In the first week, that's going to be very difficult. Do your best. Try and get that strum on 1. But if you only get to strum maybe 4 times the chord changes because the chord changes are so slow, that's okay too. Particularly when you start playing songs. There's some other challenges that I'm going to talk about in the following video. But the key thing that I want to mention is this counting to 4, just going 1, 2, strum on the first beat.
Okay, that was a little bit too beginner for me. Let's go to the next one. Mark is complete. Definitely can strum on the one.
Hey, how you doing? Justin here. Today I want to talk about strumming the correct strings. Now, as you're probably aware, when we play a D chord,
Is that his dog?
we
Wait,
don't
wait,
want
wait,
to play
wait, wait,
the
wait.
thick. Hey, how you doing? Justin here. Today I want to talk about strumming the correct strings. Now, as you're probably aware, when we play a D chord,
That's gotta be
we
his
don't want
dog.
to play.
Come on.
Hey, how you doing? Justin here. Today I want to talk about
Yeah,
strumming
that's his
the
dog.
correct
All right.
strings.
I
Now,
fucking love this
as
guy
you're
now.
probably aware, when we play a D chord,
His dog's in the back.
we don't want to play
Yes.
the thickest two strings. But as a beginner, that's going to be quite challenging, especially if you're playing a song that you're worried about your chord changes and everything else.
Dude,
So I want to
you're
say,
the shit.
does it really
and
matter?
thank you.
Now, if you're aiming for the thinnest four strings for the D chord and you accidentally hit the fifth string, it sounds fine. In fact, sometimes it sounds really good to have that note. On the D chord, the thicker string doesn't sound very good. But you know what? In the early stages, it's going to happen, so don't worry about it. If you accidentally hit that thicker string, no one's going to get hurt. It's not going to cause any problems. It might not be perfect, but that doesn't matter. It's really important that you get that. The fun thing here is making your chord changes, trying to do the strumming, playing along with some songs. There's a whole lot of stuff to learn. Not playing the thicker string on a D chord is quite important in the grand scheme of guitar, but not in the first few weeks. So try not to hit the string, but if you accidentally hit it, it doesn't matter. With the A chord, you're not supposed to play the thicker string, but it doesn't sound bad. Actually, it's a note in the chord. Actually, every note is part of an A chord. And here, two outside strings are both the note E. So if you can play the thinnest one and kind of play the thickest one, it just doesn't sound as good as if you leave it out. Now, these things are ideal, so it's the sort of thing that you want to bear in mind when you're practicing, but there are other priorities like making the chord changes, strumming on the one, making sure that the notes are nice in the chords. That sort of stuff is far more important than possibly accidentally hitting one of the strings that you should on a particular chord. So be aware of it when you're practicing, particularly you're doing your chord perfect exercises. You want to be doing your strum correctly from the right string and making sure that you don't play those thickest two strings. But especially when it comes to songs, when there's other stuff going on, this really is at the top of the priority list.
Okay. So that's cool. But he had more on that coming up. Don't stress. All right. Previous lesson. Notepad. What? We're going to go back to the chord perfect exercise because the 1 minute drill was cool. And we're definitely going to go back to it. And this trick, the anchor, no thank you. The A chord. Okay. Jeez. Strumming with your thumb. Alright, give us just a sec, because we gotta use the rest. The facilities, guys. We'll be right back for some more fun and lessons. Okay, so I got my coffee. Took a little, R. Kelly break. Well, that's not a good way to put it. I had a pee break. Alright, so what we have been doing is working on some fine tuning from Justin Guitar. We're using the Orange Amps beginner rock course, but it does leave certain stuff out. Like I like Justin's fingering for the A chord a lot better than the rock chord that they showed us. But I don't know, it also tells me that Orange course is pretty good. This is basically like the gold standard for self-taught courses here with Justin Guitar. So we're checking it out, and checking out this one, how to
Hey,
strum
how you
without a
doing?
pick.
Justin here. Today we're going to be talking
It's a
about
long one.
strumming without a
All right,
pick. It's
let's
something
get
I get
settled in.
asked about a whole lot. It's kind of a big subject, really. For most beginners, I think they tend to turn to it because they can't use a pick. And I don't think that's the kind of the right option. If you're struggling to use a pick, I think you want to try using a very thin pick and struggle with it a little bit longer, because I think for real beginners, it's a bit easier and better in the long term to be able to strum with a pick. However, when I'm strumming the guitar, more than 50% of the time I choose to strum without a pick. Now, there's a lot more options when you choose to strum without a pick, as well as in the ways that you do it. When you strum with a pick, most people tend to hold the pick the same way, they move the arm the same way. There's kind of a lot more, it's not limited, but there seems to be one way that works for most people most of the time. Whereas when you take that away and you're using your hand, there's a lot more options as to how you angle your fingers on the strings, whether you use your thumb or your finger or a combination of those things, how much you move your arm, how much you move your thumb or your fingers independently of the arm. There's a lot more options. And I think that's one of the reasons why I kind of prefer it, because you can get a lot more tonal variations, there's a bit more to think about. So this video is for beginners to explore playing without a pick if you don't want to play without a pick for whatever reason, and for more intermediate and advanced guitar players to get some ideas on ways of exploring playing without a pick. So it's kind of multiple levels here, and hopefully beginners will find it kind of interesting, and it'll give you hopefully the right idea of finding a way that works well for you, because I think that's one of the key things here, is finding the way that works best for you. So I'm going to start by talking about using your thumb. Now, when you're strumming with your thumb, if you just strum down with your thumb, you get the kind of the fleshy part of the thumb quite obviously, right? It's quite a round sound compared to if I use a pick. It's kind of louder and a bit brighter. So if I use my thumb, it's a little bit rounder, a little bit fuller. I'm not sure that the brightness is sometimes good when you're recording, but not all the time, so I don't think that that's necessarily an advantage, just a bit different. When you do an up strum, if you're just going to use your thumb, there's a couple of options and things that you need to be aware of, depending on how you angle your hand. So if you keep your thumb kind of the palm flat with the guitar when you use your thumb, it can kind of hook up under the strings and get caught and get a little bit uncomfortable. So it's worth realizing that when you strum up, you want the thumb to be a little bit more kind of facing, it needs to be at an angle where it's not hooking. So you need to explore a bit how that works and how that feels with your thumb, so that it's not hooking under the strings, that the angle of your thumb isn't going to cause it to get trapped and go all kind of weird when you're strumming up with the thumb. So that's the first thing, is just to think about it. Now generally, I think rather than the thumb kind of pointing up like that, it wants to be kind of thinking that way a little bit for the up strum. Okay, just a little bit, doesn't have to be a lot. That's the first thing to think about, is just be aware when you're strumming with your thumb, how is it angled against the strings, and is it going to hook in? Is either the bit of the flesh where it meets the nail can hook in, or the whole angle of the thumb could kind of throw you in? I mean, shouldn't be like that. You want to keep your wrist nice and close to the strings, I think, for the thumb thing. But again, there's some different options I'll talk about in a second. So that's the first thing just to be aware of, is trying to find a way that it doesn't hook into the strings. Now, because you've got a nail on the top of your thumb, it's possible to get a fleshy sound on the down and a naily sound on the up, which is obviously brighter. So flesh, bright, fresh. Now, that feels a little bit weird for me like that. I'm having to consciously kind of drag my nail on the strings. I find that if I keep my hand a little flatter, that I can still get the fleshy part. It's kind of the fleshy part underneath my thumb that's doing the strum, not the nail like that, the fleshy part. Now, because generally you don't probably want the up strums to be bright and the down strums to be muted like this. It just sounds a little bit kind of wonky to my ear, I think to most people probably. So if you're going to strum with just your thumb, I'd recommend just mainly working on that fleshy part and trying to get it so it's even like that. See, there's not really a big accent there on the up strums. With the nail I can do it, but it sounds a bit, makes it sound a little bit wonky. So I'd recommend just thinking about the flesh. Now, when it comes to the motion of the arm there, you can use, just keeping all your fingers kind of nice and open and relaxed, you can move your whole arm just like you would if you were doing strumming with a plectrum. But you could also, there are some guys that kind of put their fingers on the actual guitar and just strum with the thumb motion itself. Now, neither of those ones is particularly more valid than the other one. It's just what feels comfortable for you. There's no way that you should feel one way is superior other than what's working for the song and what's working for the person playing. And I think this is where it gets into slightly more complicated for beginners, because I think for a beginner it's a bit easier to know what's right. And when you're using a pick, as I said, there tends to be more one way to do it. So there's the right way of doing it, mostly. Of course, it's not quite that black and white, but there's mostly the right way to do it, and then ways that are maybe not so good. But with this fingers thing, there's a few more options, and therefore it can get a little bit more complicated, and beginners might feel a little bit, well, I'm not sure I'm doing it right. And the test, I guess, to see if you're doing it right for you is if it feels nice to you, if it sounds nice. Because that's the two most important things. It needs to sound nice to you and to other people, and it wants to feel nice and comfortable and relaxed. You don't want it to feel all complicated and difficult. That's not the point. It should feel comfortable. So you need to explore a little bit. First of all, the angle of your thumb, how you're going to play, whether you want it to be all fleshy or fleshy and nail. Unlikely you're going to want that, but you might do. And then think about whether you want to try and keep the whole arm moving, or whether you just want to think about using your thumb, or a mixture. So maybe your arm moves a little bit and your thumb's moving as well. It's not one or the other. There's combinations here that you can explore, and you shouldn't feel like you have to do one or the other. Okay, so that'll be playing with the thumb. It's one of my favorite personally. I like playing with the thumb a lot, particularly with the fleshy thing. If I'm doing a little ballad or something that's a bit, mellower, and it feels. I like the feeling of the strings on the flesh of my fingers as well. I like that. It's nice. Strumming with a pick, of course, is something I do a lot as well, and there's definitely advantages to that. The crispness and the brightness, and particularly if you're playing with a band, it can be a big advantage. But there's lots of other advantage here. That's with the fingers thing as well, which we're going to get into now. So that's talking about the thumb on its own. Now the other option is quite a common one, is using your first finger on its own. Now, if you're going to strum with your first finger, if you strum down, you're most likely to get this use the nail part of your first finger. And then on the up pick, you tend to use the fleshy part of the finger. So you get nail, flesh, nail, flesh. Now, it's kind of more musical than to have the nail on the 1, 2, 3 and the 4 and the fleshy part on the end. So that would be normally 1 and 2 and 4. If you were strumming every beat. Now, you're going to find with the up strum again, you need to be aware of the position so that your finger doesn't kind of hook into the strings, right? So it needs to be kind of pointing up. So down and then up. It's going to be, pointing at the ground for the upstroke, and then you're going to curl your finger a little bit further down. It's kind of like try and slow right down. Now this approach, doing it like this with my first finger, like this, I'm not tending to make a big motion with my arm. I can do. I'll talk about another option for that in a sec. But the finger strumming sort of thing is very much kind of up and down, and it's nail on the way down and finger on the way up. Now, if you don't want that difference in dynamic between the nail and the finger, you can also use the flesh of your first finger. So this way you're keeping your hand a lot flatter. Instead of it this way, up and down this way, you think of it a bit more that way. Now this is very soft and delicate, so I would only ever use this as kind of a ballady kind of thing. It's lost all of the top end, it's not very bright, it's soft, it's hard to get like a big dynamic range, like the range between how loud and how soft you can be. But it's quite nice and delicate as well, so there might be times where that kind of thing see, I still want to, occasionally I want to be hitting the nail to get it a little bit more crunchy, but definitely there have been occasions where I've been using mainly the little fleshy, using the finger pointing thing. Now, the other option that's very common for just playing with fingers is to hold your finger together like you're holding a pick. So you pretend that you're holding a pick, but the pick becomes your first finger. Okay, so that way it's quite a nice one again for beginners. If you're playing or you dropped your pick, you're used to the technique. You should practice a little bit, just putting your fingers together like you're holding a pick. Now, straight away I'm more into moving my arm like I would when I'm playing with a pick. Okay, so pivoting from the elbow, trying to move the whole forearm up and down together. Okay, so it's much more, feels like more of a strum if I go into just holding my first finger and my thumb together like this. It's not actually any different to just using your first finger because you're not using your thumb, but there's something about gripping it together. It makes it a little bit more solid, it gives it a little bit more volume. Again, the things that you want to be aware of is just, particularly for the up strum, making sure that you're not hooking into the string. So that'll just be experimenting with the angle of your first finger. You don't want it pointing kind of up into the strings. You want it like pointing directly in, or even a little bit kind of first finger pointing slightly toward the ground to avoid that kind of getting hooked up there. So all of these things are all a little bit different. There's not a right or a wrong. You can use your thumb by itself. You can use the thumb and then a bit of the nail on the up strums, or just the flesh of the thumb. You can use just your first finger. You can have it going up and down like that. You can strum your whole hand and use the fleshy pad of the first finger. You can hold your thumb and your first finger together.
Oh my
but
God,
there's even
man.
more options than that, right? So that's just a starting point. Another really, really common one is to use your thumb on the bass note, so usually on beat 1 and beat 3, and then use your first finger for doing a little down and up strum. So you have this 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So thumb, down, up with the first finger, thumb, up, down. Thumb, down, up with the first finger, thumb, up, down with the first finger. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. For example, there's lots of different patterns that you could use, but this is just one. There's infinite number of patterns that you can get into if you start exploring that as an option. But that again is a really, really common kind of starting point, the idea of having the bass note with a nice round, fleshy thumb sound, and then that down strum with the first finger where you're using the pick. You know, it's called playing on the back beat, which is the beat 2 and 4, when they're accented a little bit. This 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4. It's emulating the snare drum from a drummer. So you get that do ga do ga do 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2. So having that 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's a really, really nice little option, something that, again, you don't have to. You would likely pick a little harder on beats 2 and 4 if you were playing with the pick, but if you're playing with your fingers, you think about ways of dealing with that. So you're using the thumb on the 1 and 3 and the finger down hit with the first finger on beats 2 and 4. It's quite a nice little option. Now, last thing I want to talk about is the mixing of all of that together, and that's probably one of the things that I like most about playing with fingers as opposed to a pick, is this being able to mix up the strummy part with the finger-styly part. You know, one of my favourite guitar players in the world is Neil Young, and he's an expert at doing that. The way he combines little melody elements within the strumming, it's kind of like strumming in finger style, and you can get a bit percussive and all of that sort of stuff all at the same time. It's not for beginners. I wouldn't recommend beginners jump into trying to do this because it's way more complicated. But just to give you a kind of a taste of what's going on, the idea would be along the lines of what I was talking about before, where you have this bass note playing on beat 1 and 3, little strum in between. So you get into a kind of a bit where you can kind of do finger style within the strumming and keep the strumming going at the same time. That's the longer term goal, I think, if you're going to pursue the finger styly, finger strumming, is to be able to incorporate those things if you feel you need. Now, more is not always better. Sometimes it's better just to keep the strumming real simple. It depends on what the song needs, not what you fancy doing. Okay, that's a really important thing to realize, is that you should be playing for the song, not just for your, to show off what techniques that you've got. So always kind of bear that in mind. What's the song that you're playing? How does it feel good? Is it a ballad? Is it a up-tempo thing? How should it feel? What's the best way to deliver a particular piece? So, to summarize, for beginners, I would recommend, if you don't want to use a pick for whatever reason, you get into using your thumb, the fleshy part of your thumb, and just get into using a little bit of arm motion, a little bit of thumb. Try and get used to making sure that the thumb doesn't catch on anything. So just that, thinking about the angle, just take it slowly and see if you can notice if something's going wrong. If you're getting one of the strums is too loud, or you're getting a bit of nail, or it's...
I don't think that was actually the one that we wanted to find. Alright. Previous lesson. How to hold a pick? No. How to play the D chord. Where's the chord perfect, man? Strumming, 1 minute changes. I gotta go to the bathroom again. Holy shit, man. There's gotta be a chord perfect one, though, in this one. Alright, we will be back in just a minute after we use the restroom again.